Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending and registering for our webinar. We're talking about leveraging next generation technology to support special education. And my name is Richard Capone. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Let's Go Learn. And first of all, I do want to mention real quickly, we were endorsed last year by CASE, which is the preeminent Council Administrator of Special Educators. So that was a pretty big deal, and we're excited about that. So today's webinar is going to be action-packed. We are recording it, so don't worry. You'll get a copy of the slides and the video tomorrow or the day after. So you don't have to worry about if you miss something, you'll get a recording of it, as well as also a PDF of the slides. So let me go ahead and just go over our agenda. Now also, you can ask questions by entering it into either the chat or the Q&A in Zoom, and we will do questions at the very end. I am going to try to stick with 30 minutes, so I'm going to go fast and be concise. Because I know you all have busy days. So here's the agenda. First of all, I'm going to explain who Let's Go Learn is, and then I'm going to talk about the challenges facing special education so that I could then talk about how technology is helping to solve these challenges. And then I'll be doing a system demo, and then finally we'll have Q&A. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start. So who is Let's Go Learn? So I founded Let's Go Learn with Dr. McCollum back in 2000. He ran the Reading Credential Program, and basically our goal was to create an online assessment that answers why. Why is a student struggling, or why are they doing well, for that matter? And at the time, right, it was brand new. It was very difficult. People were using modems, and so our first assessment actually launched on a modem. So it's quite interesting. All right. So let me talk about the challenges facing special education. So first of all, there's still widespread shortages in special education. It requires faster onboarding. It makes it very difficult, right, to get these new teachers up to speed. The other thing that's really difficult is a lot of the assessments that are out there. A lot of districts, when they buy assessments, they're buying general benchmark assessments that are made for general ed, as opposed to having something that's specifically for special education. So a lot of those assessments, there's a disconnect between your baseline data and your progress monitoring data. And so that makes it very difficult for new teachers, especially who are supposed to be doing all these very difficult monitoring processes, right? The other thing is, we know the IEP process is laborious and it's hard. It requires expertise. So again, you have these new teachers who are expected to write really high quality IEPs, write good quality goals, and this is all difficult and challenging, right? Especially in today's climate. Finally, the other big challenge I think is not always talked about is a lack of continuity between general CNI, curriculum instruction, intervention, and SPED. And not having that continuity makes it very difficult, because in the end of the day, sometimes people are working in an isolated area, right? So I want to talk about all of these. So first of all, what is Let's Go Learn? So at the high level, Let's Go Learn is a diagnostic assessment platform. We have reading assessment, math assessments. We got a dyslexia screener. We have progress monitoring. So that diagnostic assessment at the top level, and I also wanted to point out, it's special ed accurate diagnostic assessment, right? So that's different. This assessment assesses students online. It goes into the heart of our system, which is called Active Pulse data set. And then that generates these automated gap-focused ELA and math supplemental curriculum for each student. You could also, teacher can assign the lessons. You could use it for small grouping. There's lots of amazing reports. But that's what we are at the heart, right? We're assessment, diagnostic assessment, and data-driven personalized learning, all right? Now, the same assessment is given if a school is using us across all students. It's the same assessment, but what varies is the reports. Special educators are going to be using the IEP reports that we have that I'll be showing you. MTSS or intervention might be using more of our supplemental instruction maybe, and they're going to be able to vary the intensity, whereas a general ed teacher may be really just using the summary, summative one-page reports, right? But the cool thing is, same data across the whole district, but you really are specializing in the reports and how you're implementing it, right? So how does our technology support you? And by the way, I don't have too many slides. I'm talking only for another 5 minutes on slides, and then I'm going to jump into the system. Okay, so this is the way it works. You would diagnostically assess all your students, and then based on that diagnostic data, you're going to automatically know your present levels. Teachers won't have to guess. You'll be able to figure out, how do I write that IEP? We have some narrative pieces as well. Then you would, step two is you use the special reports we have to determine short-term objectives. So sort of plan out your instruction over the next 8 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever period it may be. And then you could use our automated supplemental SDI, which is our online course in the ELA and math. So you can give those to the students to fill in their gaps automatically, or you can assign lessons. Next, as you're queuing up quizzes to test your students formatively, did they learn what I just taught them or what they just learned on the system? It automatically logs that data, all those quizzes, whether they're mastered or not, and it lays on top of your baseline data. So this is really key. So the teacher doesn't have to think about it. Then when they need to progress monitor after 4 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever your period is, they then just click a button, and then they could show whether the students made growth or not, and they could do an adjustment. So this is the process that a special education teacher would follow. And then, of course, in the very center, we're there to support you with training. At the very beginning, how do I use the data to write an IEP? Later on, after testing, how do I set short-term goals? How do I monitor? And so we're going to be there to provide ongoing relevant PD. Okay, so that's the process. Now, you may ask, what's the secret sauce? How do you guys actually work? Why are you different, right? Because again, here I am saying we're a diagnostic assessment company and we do something really, really well, and I need to explain and back that up. So the reason why we're quite different is that we are built on a diagnostic model of assessment. So what does that mean? So when we look at math, for instance, we break math into 44 subtests, right? So think about that. We break math into 44 subtests, and each subtest is the stacking of skills in a scope and sequence. Now, a diagnostic model says, I don't really care what grade level the student actually is in. I care where their present level is. So even if the student's a 5th grader, we're going to go down to K if we need to, or 1st grade. We're going to go up and down, up and down, up and down to find their actual zone of proximal development or their present level. And that's very unique because a lot of assessments really are more grade level focused, right? They're looking at the grade level standards of a 4th grader. Maybe they go down to 3rd grade and they really are just testing around this band. And so they miss the gaps, or maybe they miss the peaks, and you end up with generalized data, right? And that is what a standards-based assessment does, is it looks at grade level standards. So let me break this out a little bit more. If we take a look at just place value on the student's right there around high 4th grade, what does that mean? In our assessment, when you go into the detailed reports, you see, well, place value is broken up into all these skills right here, and this student has mastered all of these, and these are the skills they have yet to master. So in a sense, this is their present level, and these are the 2 skills you need to work on next. And we've identified that actually at the concept and skill level, and it's accurate. It's not just one question. We actually give a set, right? So again, that's because we're designed to be accurate at that level. Okay, so reading, same thing. We break reading into 6/7 subtests. So again, even if somebody's an 8th grader, and we're going to go down and find maybe their comprehension level is at 4th grade, maybe their spelling level down in 2nd grade. We go up and down to find actual instructional points, actual present levels, because we're not guessing, right? And as a special educator, you need this. And you only get this from a diagnostic model of assessment when assessment is built that way. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Again, I don't want to read through all this, but by being structured like this, we're going to be able to support all these different pieces of special education, whether it's having narrative-based PLAFs, whether it's having standard-based goals, or being able to help in all these different areas, right? So last couple slides, and then I'm jumping into the demo. The great thing about all this, if you have super data, right, and you have a really good instructional system, which we do, it then really gives you fantastic gap-driven SDI, and that's what we call our EDGE product, EDGE 3.0. We base it on these 3 factors. So if you really want to optimize learning, you need to consider engagement, cognitive load, and motivation. So we consider all 3 of these factors, and this also provides equity and access, right? Your program is not equitable if you don't really consider all 3 of these. So in our program, the unique learning path is really determined based on the really good assessment we have up front. So this is really probably extremely important. That reduces that cognitive load, so the student doesn't struggle too much if we're giving them something way too hard, right? We make sure we have cultural relevancy, music to activate the brain, voice and intonation, multiple modes of user interface, and gamification. So all of these are the factors that we built into our EDGE program, really to help support students in special education or at-risk students to do well and to learn. Together, these allow us to really accelerate learning, all right? Okay, so let me go ahead and show the system. So this is this is live data, actually, real student data, but the names have been obfuscated. So, we don't have to worry about privacy, right? So everything's been changed in that regard. Okay, so I'm assuming I've tested a group of students. I'm going to go into, let's look at our reading data first. And initially we see this, we see, okay, well, here's our reading data. If you roll your mouse over it, let me just blow this up. We see high frequency words, word recognition, phonics, phonemic awareness, spelling, vocabulary comprehension. Now notice these are grade level scores. So this is the first piece I think is really interesting. We do grade level scores so that way it's easy to understand, right? This student is at low first grade in high frequency words. In phonics, they're at the kindergarten level, right? And so I could see this right off the bat. If I want to sort my class, I can sort from low to high or high to low. Now this is interesting. Because we're in a grade level score, our grade level scores are vertically aligned. So naturally, natively, they're vertically aligned. So if I have a student who's in 3rd grade or 5th grade, and as you can see, this is a mixed class, I can compare them, right? I don't have to worry about how do I compare a 725 RIT score for a 4th grader to a 720 RIT score for a 1st grader, right? I don't have to do that. The scale is naturally vertically aligned. So this student, Catherine Woods, is at a 4.5 in phonics. Ava Wade is at a 3.5 in phonics, and Juan is at 1.5. I could see this, and if I want to actually look at the instructional grouping within phonics, I click on this button, and now I see, this is the scope and sequence of how we teach phonics. These students are working on beginning sounds, right? And this one student, Catherine, she's working on trying to master multiple syllable words. These are my instructional groups. So if I am working in a small group, I could say, okay, well, you know what? Let me just cue these students up. I can actually assign a lesson, beginning sounds. So we have lessons you can just go ahead and assign. Or if I want to assign Catherine, maybe I'd assign her a higher level phonics lesson. So I could do that. Very easily, as you see, click, click, click. And this is something we train your teachers to do, right? We don't expect everyone to learn how to do this right away. All right, so let me, zoom back out. Sorry, I blew up my screen so much, everything is hidden there. Okay, so back to that page. Now, if we come over here, the other thing, of course, is we have lots of reports. So if I want to take a look at some different reports here, I can. Let's take a look at this one report here for Sarah. I have a summary report, I have a teacher report, and we have some goal setting that I'm going to show you as well. So let's go ahead and just do the teacher report. I'm going to include recommendations with scores. And here it is. So we try to make these reports, let me blow this up a little bit. We try to make this in very everyday language. So how Sarah reads words. So in this section, we're looking at high frequency words, word recognition, and phonics, right? So these are the different skills that we want to look at. And we could see, actually this student's interesting. They have some sight word knowledge and some non-sight word knowledge, 6th grade, but their phonics is really, really low. And so we can see that they're working on, they have some beginning sounds, but they really need to work a lot on these phonics principles right here, and we see what they need to work on next. And then also here, how Sarah puts it all together. Anyway, this is a very, very easy to read report. This is a very popular one to share with parents or with tutors. Down below, we have some recommendations as well, and so on and so forth. Okay. Again, powerful data that's automatically available as soon as you're done with the assessment. Okay, so let me now show you something else. Okay, so let me show you the special education, the IEP tool. This is a key one for special educators. Let's go into math though, because I think math sometimes is a little bit more challenging to write IEPs or to set goals, just because there's so many subtests and skills. So if we look at this here, initially this looks pretty normal, right? You're used to seeing these kind of scores. Here's Mason. He's got a 2.79 overall score in numbers and operating. He's 3.90 in measurement, 1.25 in data. So these are grade level scores, so you can sort of see. But this is still summative data, right? So really what I'm concerned about, let's break this apart. So if I want to really take a look at number and operation specifically, I can. So within numbers or operations, we see it. There's numbers, there's place values, ordering and comparing, addition of whole numbers, subtraction of whole numbers. We break it apart. And again, you could group your class by any of these subtests. Click from low to high, high to low. Green means they've totally mastered that particular subtest, and so on and so forth. Again, I could also go in here and just like I showed you in phonics, I could grab one of the subtests and say instructional placement, and we see exactly where the students are within these areas, okay? All right, so the other thing we have is, which is really interesting, and again, I know I'm going really fast, but let me show you the IEP tool, because this I think is really fascinating. So if we take a look at a student, let's go ahead and let me just go back to, let's see here. All right, let's take a look at Anna. Okay, so if I take a look at Anna, she's in mid-second grade. We see her scores right here, 1.38. Looks like she's a little lower in numbers and operation. I'm going to go ahead and select special education, which is the special education report. Initially, we see her scores here. And so we would train teachers how to do this, right? So you may say, okay, well, what do I want to do for their goal? So I think I'm going to want to focus on numbers and operations because that's really a very key subtest or strand. And so I have this selected. So initially, what is her present levels? So it shows Anna can identify the numbers that come before a given number. Great. Within place value, Anna can identify place value in 1s and 2-digit numbers. I know this for sure. She was given a set of items and she's demonstrated mastery. So this is not one question that we made this conclusion. We don't do that because that's not really ethical or accurate to say that. And we don't use terms like developmentally ready. That just means you're guessing, right? So when you see testing companies say, Richard is developmentally ready to do X, Y, Z, that means they're not quite sure, they're just guessing. Okay, so this is their present levels. You can copy this data, you can use it when you're writing your IEP. Now, with my IEPs done, and now I want to focus on, what do I do over the next 8 weeks? I could say, let's show me the next 3 skills to focus on. And this is very definitive. Okay, what I would do is I would look at these things, say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and focus probably on some numbers. So Anna will identify corresponding cardinal numbers. That's a very specific skill. And maybe I'd also work on this one too. And then I would also start focusing on additional whole numbers because this is, you can see the score here. It's a kindergarten skill, so I need to start working on modeling addition and subtraction and then identify equivalent additional number sentences. So again, this is what I need to work on. I could pick out 4 or 5 skills based on the student's data of what I need to work on. In the future, it's exciting. We're going to be helping you rewrite these in your SMART goal format, but I can talk about that later. But anyway, you see this really for a new teacher. This is amazing, right? We have so many schools who just love this because they're saying they're cutting down their IEP writing time by 50% or more. I'm gonna show you a couple more things, and then we're gonna move on. But the one other thing I just want to focus on too is the other side about it is we have fully automated instruction, right? So if you have these different students and you want to go ahead, use our Edge, you enroll them, and then automatically it creates a path that's going to just give them the lessons exactly what they need. So if I go ahead and take a look in upcoming lessons, here it is. We could see these are the different, and this is a demo account, so obviously the student hasn't done it, but it shows you what are the lessons they're going to be working on. And this is all unique. It's totally based on the student. Later on, if you want to monitor it, you can. The great thing too is as you give quizzes, right? As you give quizzes, and somebody masters something, we pull the lessons out of the student's instructional path because our system is a real-time progress monitoring and instructional system. And let me show you the other piece here too. One more thing, then we're going to open to Q&A. You may say, well, how does progress monitoring work? Well, if I'm working with a student and I'm teaching them something, maybe I'm teaching it as a teacher myself, and I know, okay, I want to go ahead and queue up a quiz. So I would come over here and say, let me go to Mason. And I'm going to go ahead and I can just type in the quiz name. So I can say place value decimal right here. I'm going to go ahead and queue up a 5-question quiz on place value decimal. If that student masters that, and I'll show you what happens, or I can go ahead and type something else, or I can filter. Let's say I want to filter it by grade level or subject. Say long vowel. Okay, here it is, long vowel. So I can also queue up a long vowel quiz, okay? So I queue those up for Mason. He takes them, he passes it, and then what happens is automatically I come over to my scores again later and I take a look at progress monitoring and I click on this, And now I could see all their data, right? This student only has been doing it for a short period of time, but all their scores sort of show up over time. And I can say, okay, what do I want to quiz? Or what do I want to graph? So I can go ahead and just click on these and chart them, and now we see their growth. Now right now I'm showing the strands, but I could break it down. But this is amazing because as a teacher, I don't have to think about generating a graph. I don't think about correlating a quiz to my baseline data. It just automatically happens. If I give a quiz on long vowel, the student goes up in phonics, and then their total score is up. All that is recalculated and new scores show up. I don't have to think about that as a teacher. It's automatic, all right? I am now going to take some questions. I see some questions are popping up over here. But just real quickly before I jump into Q&A, just to sort of reiterate this, full service professional development, right? So we're going to operationalize PD for your principals, for your teachers, your specialists. We're also going to deliver it throughout the year. We're going to deliver it online, in person, however you want it. And then of course, reporting. We have a whole data portal that's made for reporting at a district level, at a site level. We also have lots of teacher reports. So there's lots of stuff also to support everyone in the larger district or the smaller school. Okay, so let's go ahead and take some questions. And I see a bunch popping up. All right, so here's an interesting one. Can you explain in more detail why your assessment works better than Ames Web, which we're using for progress monitoring? Okay, great. Ames Web is very similar in the sense that you can queue up these quizzes, right? You say, oh, I want to test long vowel. That's what we do. But the difference is if you give our baseline assessment at the start of the year, you have these base set of data, let's say in reading, right? You have 7 subtest scores, high frequency words, phonics, spelling, comprehension. You have those scores and a total score. But as the teacher starts giving quizzes, these CBMs, like long vowel, like 4th grade comprehension, like 3rd grade sight words, as the students pass those and have mastery, that lays on top of your baseline data. So that is what's unique about us because our baseline data and our progress monitoring data are compatible. So that'd be the real difference, I'd say, with Ames Web. Otherwise, Ames Web, it's a decent progress monitoring tool, but the teacher has to know which quizzes to give. We actually help you because we do a diagnostic assessment and we find those present levels. So you're going to have a good idea of where to go. So in that sense, our system also helps direct you. How is your diagnostic model assessment different from iReady or Edmentum? They are adaptive and diagnostic as well. Okay, so this is where that word diagnostic is used very loosely. All ed tech companies like saying they're diagnostic, but this is where you really have to go into it and look at it. If you look at some of the companies, literature and their sample reports, you can see if they really are. The difference with us, I would say, is that we will adapt up and down K-12 regardless of your grade in reading. And in math, we're going to adapt K to 7/8 regardless of your grade level. So we also break up into more subtests than most companies, right? Most companies don't break up into a lot of subtests in math, and in reading they may or may not. So that's the real difference there, right? Okay, this is a tough one. It says, our teachers, especially our new ones, struggle with learning another system. Your system seems really complicated. How can it be better for new teachers? I don't get it. Okay, well put. Yes, we have a lot of pieces to it, but fundamentally our system, we also roll it out in training. The first training teachers get is, how do I assess my kids? Right? So they assess it. The next training is going to be, general ed teachers are going to be, how do I look at my students in a class and maybe sort them by highest to lowest, run summary reports. The second training for special ed teachers may be, how do I access data to help with my IEP? So we chunk it into pieces. Now here's the other thing I would also argue. When you tell your new special ed teacher, find your students' present levels and write an IEP, that is really hard to do. And I would argue that most of them do not have the test or time to find all present levels. And what ends up happening is they end up creating these general goals that are like, we need to work on Richard's arithmetic in basic mathematics. That's not specific enough, right? So I would argue what we're asking them to do is very difficult and sometimes insurmountable. So the little bit of training we need on our system is not as difficult. We also will work with you, trainings, open office hours. So we do lots of different things to help support teachers. Okay, here's another question. Can you tell me more about what specifically your software does to help create IEPs and save time? Will Let's Go Learn help me document the evidence for a claim? Okay, so I showed you that report, right, on how to look in there and find those goals. That's really the thing, what we're doing. And then when I showed you also the progress monitoring reports, those bars, that is going to be your documentation, because what they want to know is, did the student make progress? Did you teach them different things? The other piece I didn't show you would be the logs. When you do instruction in our system, you can also see specifically what we've taught the students. And so there's a log of every single lesson a student's received. Now, at a school level, if you're worried about accountability, you can actually run a school level report that lists every single lesson a student has done, based on per student. So there's really some really good compliance record keeping that we have as well. But again, that's something that gets more advanced. We could work with you on making sure that if you use our system, we help support you in your compliance needs, right? All right, I think, we have a couple more minutes. And here's another one. Two more questions. Does Let's Go Learn provide customized professional development? Absolutely, right? We totally do. We provide customized professional development. We will work with you to articulate what kind of PD do you need. If you need PD for paraprofessionals, for special ed teachers, for secondary SPED teachers, we'll do that. Boy, there's a lot of questions popping up. What's the difference between Goalbook? We work with Goalbook. Goalbook gives you goals, and it's almost like a repository for goals. You have to look them up. But Goalbook does not find those present levels, right? It's not an assessment. So if you're a teacher and I know I need to work on short vowel with Richard, I need to work on phonics, I can go to Goalbook and try to find that language that I want to use, but it doesn't tell me how do I know what I'm working on. So that's where we do it, and then we do give you those generalized goals of what you need to work on. Okay, so next question, maybe this might be the last one. You mentioned that you're a next-gen company. What about AI? How are you using AI? Or will you use it at all? Okay, so we are going to be using AI. The next goal is those goals I showed you, where it says, so-and-so Mason will work on place value, or Mason will work on adding 2-digit numbers, or whatever it was. We're going to work on using AI to help us rewrite those into your SMART goal format. Now, what's cool about what we're doing is first generation AI is going to be implemented by companies by taking it and trying to use this generalized information to provide goals on students. But that's actually really kind of scary. What we're going to do, because it could be inaccurate, what we're doing is using our data to help us write better goals. And so we're using AI to speed up our development process, right? So we're not just trying to dump stuff. And also we insulate, because we don't ever put students' names into AI. We'll be using the ChatGPT engine by just saying, hey, rewrite these goals into this format. And then we bring back to our system, and then we push that out to the teacher. So we're using it in a very intelligent, safe way. And I think what's powerful about us is we have good data. Garbage in, garbage out. But if you have good data and you push it into AI, you get good results. But if you don't have good data and you rely on data on the many, that's actually really scary. And that's I have a blog article coming out talking about that. Okay, I'm sorry. I feel like I've been talking a mile a minute. Thank you so much for all the great questions. And right here, you do see the QR code. If you want to find out more about Let's Go Learn, you could go ahead and scan that code, and one of our ed consultants in your state will contact you. But we're looking forward to having a conversation. And now is the time to embrace this technology. I tell you, technology is so far advanced, you really have to push it to take your departments to the next level because of all the challenges. And we're happy to be working with you to support you in that process. All right, thank you so much for attending.